Good morning. My name is Andrea Gay. I'm with the Anderson's Bedding Products, and this morning on this very snowy day here in Ohio, I'm going to talk to you about bedding for thermoregulation and could that actually work? So to start off, what is thermoregulation? Well, Merriam-Webster says thermoregulation is the ability of an organism to keep its body temperature within certain boundaries even when the surrounding temperature is very different. So what does the lab animal guide say? Well, the guide says that animals should be housed within temperature and humidity ranges appropriate for species to which they can adapt with minimal stress and physiologic alteration. It also says to maintain body temperature under a given environmental temperature, animals adjust physiologically, including their metabolism, and behaviorally, including their activity level and resource use. So what does that mean? Well, what do you do when you're cold? Usually we put on sweaters, we turn up the heat, build a fire. When we're warm, we take off our coats, turn on the air. This is how we change the temperature in our environment. So what about bedding? As you can see, here's an example of a cage that has bedding in it. And this is an appropriate picture of about 1/4 of an inch of bedding. Not much for thermoregulation. The guide says the purpose of bedding is to be used to absorb moisture, minimize the growth of microorganisms, and dilute and limit animals' contact with excretia. Mice spontaneously dig in many substrates in the laboratory. This behavior comes from their ancestry in the wild, where they would forage for seeds, grain, insects, and other food to be found buried in the soil or leaf litter in their natural habitat. Using more bedding than needed may allow the animals to burrow for thermoregulation, but is not an appropriate substitution for nesting material. Bedding is used as a latrine. Its function and purpose is to absorb urine. As you can see, here's a picture of burrowing for thermoregulation in the wild. This animal has taken many substrates, straw, grass, leaves, to line and insulate his nest. When facilities are looking for bedding, the thought of what gives the best thermoregulation never enters the conversation. To perform properly, beddings need air to circulate around the bedding to keep them dry. Dry bedding equals no bacteria, which means no ammonia, and a clean environment for animals and staff. Facilities are interested in bedding characteristics such as, does it look comfortable? Is the bedding absorbent? How is it for odor control? What are the contaminant levels? Is the bedding easy to handle? Is it dispensable? What about waste removal? Do we have storage for what we will need? These are the questions facility managers are looking at for answers. Nowhere is thermoregulation mentioned. In looking at specific bedding properties, corncob bedding absorbs from the bottom up. To do this, minimal amounts need to be used, no more than 1/4 inch per cage. This is important for absorption. Looking at cob under a microscope, it looks like a sponge. Cob absorbs the urine, and when the animals move around the cage, they are turning the cob, which then dries it out. Too much per cage doesn't let the cob get turned, and the cob stays wet. Wet bedding equals bacteria, which promotes ammonia. Wood bedding absorbs from the top down. Generally, it's recommended using 5/8 of an inch per cage. This allows for maximum absorption. Looking at wood under a microscope, it is porous. With wet bedding, it will allow bacteria to grow, which allows for ammonia. Wood bedding also needs to be changed more frequently. Recycled and virgin paper beddings absorb from the top down also. It's recommended that 3/8 of an inch be used per cage for maximum absorption. Paper is very absorbent and the cage changes are extended. Too much paper being used will allow for the mulch effect of being unable to dry within the cage environment. Again, Having wet bedding will promote bacterial growth, which leads to ammonia production. Think of the cage environment as a studio apartment. They eat, sleep, and urinate all in that one space. The animals do it all within an environment that has the air conditioning on all the time, or so it feels like to them. They are given a carpet to live on. Giving them a thicker carpet makes no sense for thermoregulation. Today's current animal husbandry consists of diet for nutrition, water for hydration, and bedding for urine absorption and ammonia control. Animals should be fed palatable, uncontaminated diets that meet their nutritional and behavioral needs. Animals should have access to potable, uncontaminated drinking water according to their particular requirements. Bedding is used to absorb moisture, minimize the growth of microorganisms, and to dilute and limit the animal's contact with excreta. To offer nesting material would be encouraging typical normal mouse behaviors. Studies have shown that nests have several functions, including increasing litter survival, regulation of body temperature, protection from a predator, shelter from colds or drafts, as well as being an inherent behavior, which makes nesting material a basic need, as nesting is a natural instinct, not a learned behavior. At lower room temperatures, mice will start building nests and huddling for resting and sleeping. This helps them keep warm and behaviorally control their environment. It has been documented that abnormal repetitive behaviors are also reduced. Offering nesting material enhances the well-being of lab animals as they are able to perform more of their species-specific behaviors. Studies have shown nesting is important for eliminating stress and some abnormal behaviors. This is not enrichment, but a basic fundamental need. Currently, enrichment items are only required for singly housed animals or breeders. A lot of the items that are offered today are toys, nesting material, treats the animals are able to forage, and huts. Because of this, every rodent does not get enrichment, which is driven by budgets, study requirements, behavioral, or its lack of importance in the lab. In the wild, behaviors are very complex, involving unpredictability along with routines. Animals spend much of their time searching for food and water, foraging for materials for shelter and nest building, and mice build very intricate nests. They spend their days dragging in materials to build and line their nests with. This helps them with thermoregulation and keeps them out of sight of predators. In the lab, they are given materials for enrichment that don't allow for nest building. Because of this, these materials often aid in eliciting abnormal behaviors. Standard lab mice are housed at temperatures that are conducive to humans. They are not able to regulate their body temperatures by controlling their environment, as they are not given biologically relevant materials. Barren and unnatural environments in the lab, which they have no control over whatsoever. Studies have shown that nesting material is a basic inherent need for mice. It eliminates a lot of their stress, abnormal behaviors, and it goes back to being in their studio apartment. The animals have a small space with their physical needs met of food, water, and their latrine. They have roommates they haven't chosen, and they are not being given the opportunity to act out their instinctive behaviors. In the wild, as you can see here, there's many substrates brought into their nest. At lower room temperatures, mice will start building nests and huddling for resting and sleeping. This helps them keep warm and behaviorally control their environment. In the lab, as you can see, they've brought in two different substrates. They have their bedding for the latrine, and they have a nest built and lined. In the wild, the mice will drag in all sorts of materials. Studies have shown that mice have a biologically inherent need and show a strong preference to build their own nests. Again, when given biologically relevant nesting materials. It's been documented that abnormal repetitive behaviors are also reduced. Offering nesting material enhances the well-being of animals as they are able to perform more of their species-specific behavior. Nesting material gives inferior mice the opportunity to keep out of sight and, if needed, escape from the dominant mouse. Nesting material allows the mice to control their environment. They not only perform their instinctive behaviors, but these materials also give them control over the temperature of their environment. Mice also alter the quality of their nests in response to ambient temperature. The cooler the microenvironment is, the faster they will build a nest. And will make it very complex given two different substrates. At lower room temperatures, mice start building nests. We all know that mice are highly motivated to build their nests. Nests have several functions that are important to mice, including increasing litter survival, regulation of body temperature, protection, and shelter from a predator. Mice will build nests in response to temperature, and in the wild, they live in nests, not in a cage visible to anyone in the room and their neighbors in neighboring cages. They don't like to be seen, as it's a self-protective behavior. Today's nesting program consists of one item generally given for them to chew. Tomorrow's bedding and nesting program could consist of bedding material, urine absorption, nesting material which allows instinctive behavior, and added nesting material for thermoregulation. Mice today in the lab are given a product to nest with. This product keeps them busy chewing, but it does not allow them to build the dome-type nest that has been studied and documented appropriate for thermoregulation. 8 grams of nesting material have become the optimum amount to regulate temperature. In a perfect world, having 2 nesting substrates would allow them to control their temperature and their cage environment. Again, as you can see from this picture, they've woven a nest, it's dome-shaped, and they've lined it. This is a simple answer to today's enrichment programs. Basic nesting material is added to the bedding as one item in the animal husbandry budget. Another nesting product is added for thermoregulation. This ends the impoverished environment and makes the unnatural cage environment more natural by including biologically relevant nesting material. Offering more than one nesting material allows the animal to mimic more of the complex, multi-layered nests that their wild counterparts build naturally. This benefits all the mice in the cage and allows for less stress cage changes, as an easy transfer of material into the clean cage can be done with a dome-type nest. It promotes more of their natural nesting behaviors of gathering materials, dragging them to the nest, and fluffing and unfurling. They are also carrying out a natural mouse behavior of nest building to change their environment for survival. For facilities to use a nesting material, it has to be convenient, easy, and economical. Most facilities use some type of dispensing system, so the material needs to work within that framework. Easy to dispense, having the bedding and nesting material in one bag, and bedding and nesting allows for the perfect amount per cage to stimulate the natural instincts and behaviors of nesting, as well as perform the important function of urine absorption. And having a bedding and nesting material program is a repeatable system. The Anderson's Enrichment is the perfect base bedding as it has a corn cob for absorption and proven ammonia control. It has nesting material added to promote the nesting instincts and behaviors for less stress and abnormal behaviors. Enrichment aids in the construction of a quality nest by providing appropriate base nesting material. Adding another nesting material allows for the animals to insulate their nest. This aids in thermoregulation and allows them to mimic what would be done in nature. It also allows them to build their dome-type nest by giving them enough material to build the dome-type nest for thermoregulation and then allowing them to insulate it. It's clear that for animal welfare, and as studies have shown, adding nesting materials is not a luxury, but helps the study by reducing the variables added by stress. Offering more than one nesting material gives a choice to the animal, which empowers them and allows them some control over their environment. Using bedding and nesting materials as a base bedding program not only provides the mice more control over their environment, but also allows them to regulate their body temperature, reduce abnormal behaviors, and end the impoverished environment. In the end, a good management program provides the environment, housing, and care that permit animals to grow, mature, reproduce, and maintain good health. This provides for their well-being and minimizes variations that can affect research results. So, in short, using the base bedding and nesting material plus the added nesting material for thermoregulation allows the bedding to perform its function of absorbing excreta, not for nesting and burrowing or thermoregulation. Thank you. I appreciate you watching this talk, and I hope you all have a great day. I have no questions.